Welcome to Audiobooks stall. If you're looking to transform your life through small, consistent actions, you've come to the right place. Please like and subscribe for more insightful audiobook summaries. James Clear's Atomic Habits offers a powerful framework for improving every day by focusing on tiny, incremental changes. The core idea revolves around the aggregation of marginal gains, small improvements that compound over time to yield remarkable results. Clear emphasizes that identity plays a crucial role in habit formation. True behavior change comes from believing yourself to be the type of person who embodies the desired habit. He introduces the 4 laws of behavior change: make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. By making cues obvious and attractive, and responses easy and satisfying, we can build good habits. Conversely, inverting these laws, making cues invisible and unattractive, and responses difficult and unsatisfying, helps break bad habits. The book stresses the importance of focusing on systems rather than goals, highlighting that consistent processes are what ultimately drive success. Clear also delves into practical strategies like habit stacking, environment design, and the 2-minute rule to make habit implementation easier. Ultimately, Atomic Habits provides a practical and actionable roadmap to building better habits, one tiny step at a time, leading to significant long-term improvement. James Clear's Atomic Habits is structured to guide you through understanding and implementing the science of small habits. Part 1. The Fundamentals begins with Chapter 1, The Surprising Power of Atomic Habits, introducing the concept of tiny changes leading to remarkable results through the power of compounding. Chapter 2, How Your Habits Shape Your Identity, and Vice Versa, emphasizes the two-way street between habits and identity, arguing that true habit change is about becoming the person you wish to be. Chapter 3, How to Build Better Habits in 4 Simple Steps, lays the groundwork for the 4 laws of behavior change: cue, craving, response, and reward, which form the book's core framework. Chapter 4, The Man Who Didn't Wash His Hands, illustrates the power of small, consistent actions through a historical example. Part 2, The First Law, Make It Obvious, focuses on the first law. Chapter 5, The Best Way to Start a New Habit, introduces implementation intentions and habit stacking as strategies to make cues more obvious. Chapter 6, Motivation is Overrated. Environment Often Matters More, highlights the significant role of our environment in shaping our habits and how to design it for success. Chapter 7, The Secret to Self-Control, discusses how making cues obvious can help us avoid bad habits by reducing exposure to them. Part 3, The Second Law, Make It Attractive, delves into making habits desirable. Chapter 8, How to Make a Habit Irresistible, explains the science of dopamine and how to use temptation bundling to make good habits more attractive. Chapter 9, The Role of Family and Friends in Shaping Your Habits, explores the influence of social norms and how to leverage them for positive change. Chapter 10, How to Find and Fix the Causes of Your Bad Habits, teaches us to reframe our thinking about bad habits by understanding the underlying cravings they serve. Part 4, The Third Law, Make It Easy, focuses on reducing friction. Chapter 11, Walk Slowly, But Never Backward, emphasizes the importance of starting small and making progress, even if it's incremental. Chapter 12, The Law of Least Effort, explains that we naturally gravitate towards options that require the least amount of work and how to design our habits accordingly. Chapter 13, How to Stop Procrastinating by Using the 2-minute rule, provides a practical strategy for overcoming inertia and starting new habits. Chapter 14, How to Make Good Habits Inevitable and Bad Habits Impossible, discusses using commitment devices and automation to solidify good behaviors and eliminate bad ones. Part 5, The Fourth Law, Make It Satisfying, emphasizes the importance of reinforcement. Chapter 15, The Cardinal Rule of Behavior Change, highlights that what is immediately rewarded is repeated, and what is immediately punished is avoided. Chapter 16, How to Stick with Good Habits Every Day, introduces Habit Tracker as a way to make progress visible and satisfying. Chapter 17, How an Accountability Partner Can Change Everything, discusses the power of external accountability in maintaining habits. Part 6, Advanced Tactics, delves into more nuanced strategies. Chapter 18, The Truth About Talent, When Genes Matter and When They Don't, explores the role of genetics in habit formation and how to play to our strengths. Chapter 19, The Goldilocks Rule, How to Stay Motivated in Life and Work, discusses the importance of finding the right level of challenge to maintain motivation. Chapter 20, The Downside of Creating Good Habits, cautions against the potential for plateauing and the importance of continuous improvement and reflection. Finally, the conclusion, The Secret to Lasting Results, reiterates the core principles of the book and emphasizes the importance of patience and continuous iteration in the journey of habit building. Atomic Habits provides a comprehensive and practical guide to understanding and implementing small changes that lead to significant long-term results. Of water, seemingly insignificant. Now picture that same drop falling every single second, day in and day out. At first, you might barely notice it. But over time, those countless tiny drops accumulate, eventually filling a bucket, then overflowing it, perhaps even carving a groove into the stone it falls upon. That, in essence, is the surprising power of atomic habits, the core idea James Clear introduces in the very first chapter of his book. He tells us that our lives aren't transformed by grand, sweeping changes overnight. Instead, it's the accumulation of these tiny, almost imperceptible improvements, like that single drop of water, that leads to remarkable results over the long run. Think of it like this: improving by just 1% each day doesn't feel like much in the moment. You might not see a difference today, or even tomorrow. But those tiny gains compound, just like interest in a bank account, leading to exponential growth over weeks, months, and years. Clear uses compelling examples to illustrate this. He talks about British cycling, a team that went from decades of mediocrity to dominating the sport by focusing on these marginal gains, making tiny improvements in every aspect of their performance, from bike design to rider nutrition. Individually, these changes seemed small, but collectively, they propelled them to unprecedented success. The chapter cautions us against focusing solely on big goals and neglecting the power of these small, consistent actions. It highlights how easily we dismiss tiny improvements because they don't offer immediate gratification. We often look for the dramatic transformation, the overnight success. But the truth, Clear argues, lies in the slow, steady accumulation of atomic habits, the small routines and behaviors that, when repeated consistently, build upon each other to create significant change. So, that first chapter sets the stage, revealing the surprising and often underestimated power of making tiny changes, consistently, and letting the magic of compounding work its wonders in our lives. Quit smoking. You might set a goal: I want to stop smoking. But James Clear, in the second chapter of Atomic Habits, suggests that true, lasting change goes much deeper than just setting a goal. He paints a picture of a two-way street between your habits and your identity. It's not just about doing something, it's about becoming someone. Think of it like this: if you simply focus on the goal of not smoking, you might white-knuckle your way through cravings, constantly feeling like you're depriving yourself. But what if you shifted your perspective? What if you started to see yourself as a non-smoker? This isn't just a label, it's a fundamental shift in who you believe you are. Clear argues that our habits are not just things we do, they are the building blocks of our identity. Every action we take casts a vote for the type of person we want to be. Every cigarette you resist is a vote for being a non-smoker. Every time you go for a run, you are casting a vote for being a runner. Over time, these small votes accumulate and shape our self-image. Conversely, our identity also shapes our habits. If you truly believe you are a healthy person, you're more likely to choose nutritious food and exercise regularly. Your ingrained sense of self guides your actions. So, the story Clear tells in this chapter is about this powerful feedback loop. Lasting habit change isn't about achieving an outcome, it's about transforming your identity. It's about asking yourself, who is the type of person who would do this, and then striving to embody that identity through your daily actions. Instead of just wanting to quit smoking, you become someone who doesn't smoke. This shift in identity makes the habits feel less like a restriction and more like a natural extension of who you are. It's about aligning your habits with the person you aspire to be, creating a powerful and self-reinforcing cycle of growth. Understand how a machine works. You might take it apart piece by piece to see what makes it tick. In the third chapter of Atomic Habits, James Clear does something similar with our habits. He breaks down every habit, good or bad, into a fundamental four-part cycle. Think of it as the hidden code that governs all our repetitive behaviors. He calls these the 4 laws of behavior change, and they become the bedrock for building good habits and breaking bad ones. The story he tells is about this simple yet powerful loop: cue, craving, response, and reward. First, there's the cue. This is the trigger, the signal that tells your brain to initiate a behavior. It could be anything: the smell of coffee that makes you want a cup, the notification on your phone that makes you want to check it, or the end of your workday that makes you want to relax on the couch. Clear emphasizes that our brains are constantly scanning the environment for cues that predict rewards. Next comes the craving. This isn't necessarily the action itself, but the motivational force behind the habit. It's the desire to change your state. You don't just want the coffee, you crave the alertness and warmth it brings. You don't just want to check your phone, you crave the feeling of connection or the distraction it offers. Clear explains that cravings are linked to our desire for pleasure, avoidance of pain, or social acceptance. Then there's the response. This is the actual habit you perform. It can be a thought, an action, or a non-action. It depends on your ability and the level of friction associated with the behavior. For example, if you see the coffee queue and crave the energy, the response might be walking to the coffee machine and brewing a cup. If the phone notification is the cue and you crave connection, the response is picking up your phone and opening the app. Finally, there's the reward. This is the end goal of every habit. It satisfies the craving. The coffee provides the energy, the phone provides the connection. Clear highlights that rewards teach our brains which actions are worth remembering and repeating in the future. If the reward is satisfying, the loop becomes stronger, and the habit is more likely to be repeated when the cue appears again. So, the story Clear tells in this chapter is about understanding this fundamental four-step pattern that underlies all human habits. By dissecting our behaviors into these components, we gain a powerful framework for understanding why we do what we do. This understanding then becomes the foundation for the rest of the book, where he introduces practical strategies for manipulating each part of this loop to build good habits and break bad ones. It's like understanding the engine of a car before you can learn how to drive it effectively. Hospitals were places of both healing and death, where infections spread rampantly, and doctors unknowingly carried disease from patient to patient. In the fourth chapter of Atomic Habits, James Clear tells the story of Ignaz Semmelweis, a Hungarian physician in the 1840s, who stumbled upon a simple yet revolutionary idea: washing hands could save lives. Semmelweis worked in a Vienna hospital with 2 maternity wards. In one ward, doctors delivered babies, and the mortality rate was shockingly high, often exceeding 10%. In the other ward, midwives delivered babies, and the mortality rate was significantly lower. Semmelweis was baffled. He meticulously investigated every possible cause, from diet to air quality, but nothing explained the difference. Then, a tragic event occurred. A colleague died after contracting a similar infection to the women in the doctor's ward. Semmelweis realized that the doctors, who often came directly from performing autopsies, were unknowingly carrying the cadaverous particles on their hands to the pregnant women. The midwives, on the other hand, didn't perform autopsies. Semmelweis implemented a simple rule: doctors had to wash their hands with a chlorine solution before examining patients. The results were astonishing. The mortality rate in the doctor's ward plummeted to the same level as the midwife's ward. He had proven that a small, consistent action, hand washing, could have a profound impact. However, the story doesn't end there. Despite the overwhelming evidence, Semmelweis' findings were largely rejected by the medical establishment. His ideas challenged the prevailing beliefs of the time, and he faced ridicule and resistance. He died years later, a broken man, his revolutionary discovery largely ignored. Clear uses this historical example to illustrate the power of small, consistent actions, even when they seem insignificant. Semmelweis' hand-washing protocol was a tiny change, but it had the potential to save countless lives. This story serves as a powerful reminder that even the smallest habits, when practiced consistently, can lead to remarkable results, even if those results aren't immediately apparent or widely accepted. It also highlights the importance of trusting the evidence, even when it challenges conventional wisdom. Build a new habit, like flossing every day. You might tell yourself, "I'll floss more." But James Clear, in Chapter 5, suggests a more effective approach. He introduces 2 powerful strategies to make the cues for your desired habits so obvious that you practically can't miss them. It's like setting up a stage so your good habits have no choice but to take center stage. The first strategy is implementation intentions. This is about making a very specific plan, almost like writing a script for your habit. Instead of saying, "I'll floss more," you'd say, "I will floss at time, in, location." For example, "I will floss after brushing my teeth in the bathroom." By specifying the when and where, you eliminate any ambiguity. The cue becomes crystal clear, and your brain knows exactly when to initiate the behavior. It's like giving your future self precise instructions, leaving no room for excuses. The second strategy is habit stacking. This is about building your new habit on top of an existing one. Think of it like a chain reaction. You link the new behavior to something you already do consistently. Clear's formula is, after, current habit, I will, new habit. So, if you already brush your teeth every morning, you could stack flossing on top of it. After I brush my teeth, I will floss. The existing habit acts as a trigger, making the cue for the new habit unavoidable. It's like piggybacking your desired behavior onto something that's already a part of your routine. Clear uses examples to illustrate how these strategies work in practice. He talks about how one person might leave their running shoes by the bed, making the cue obvious, and then stack running onto their morning coffee routine. Another might place their floss container right next to their toothbrush, making the cue obvious, and then stack flossing onto their teeth brushing habit. The story Clear tells in this chapter is about taking control of the cues in your life. It's about designing your environment and your routines in a way that makes good habits inevitable. By using implementation intentions and habit stacking, you're not just relying on willpower, you're creating a system that practically forces you to follow through. It's about making the cues for your desired habits so obvious that you can't help but notice them and act on them. Eat healthier. You might be really motivated at the start, vowing to resist all those tempting snacks. But then you walk into your kitchen, and what do you see? A pantry overflowing with cookies, chips, and candies. James Clear, in Chapter 6, tells us that relying solely on motivation in such an environment is like trying to swim upstream against a strong current. He argues that our environment often plays a far more significant role in shaping our habits than we realize, and designing that environment for success is crucial. The story he tells is about how our surroundings subtly influence our behavior, often without us even being consciously aware of it. Think about it. If your phone is constantly buzzing with notifications, it's much harder to focus on work, even if you're highly motivated to do so. The environment, in this case, is constantly throwing cues at you, making the habit of checking your phone incredibly obvious and easy. Clear emphasizes that we are products of our environment. Our habits are often a response to the world around us. If the cues for bad habits are prominent and easily accessible, we are more likely to fall into those patterns, regardless of our initial motivation. Conversely, if we can make the cues for good habits obvious and the cues for bad habits invisible, we significantly increase our chances of success. He provides practical examples of how to design our environment for better habits. If you want to read more, leave books in visible places around your house. If you want to eat healthier, stock your fridge with fruits and vegetables and keep unhealthy snacks out of sight. If you want to practice an instrument, leave it out in the open instead of tucked away in a closet. The story Clear tells in this chapter is about becoming the architect of your own environment. It's about making the cues for good habits obvious and readily available, while simultaneously reducing exposure to the cues that trigger bad habits. Instead of constantly battling your urges with willpower, you're setting up your surroundings to work in your favor. It's about understanding that motivation is a fluctuating force, but a well-designed environment provides consistent support for the habits you want to cultivate. It's about making the healthy choice the easy choice and the unhealthy choice the difficult one. Resist the urge to check social media every few minutes while you're working. You might try to rely on sheer willpower, telling yourself, just focus. But James Clear, in Chapter 7, unveils a surprising secret to self-control. It's often less about inner strength and more about strategically manipulating the cues that trigger those unwanted habits in the first place. He argues that making the cues for bad habits invisible is a powerful way to avoid them. The story he tells is about how our environment is constantly bombarding us with triggers for both good and bad behaviors. Think about it. The ping of a notification, the sight of the TV remote, the candy bar sitting on your desk, these are all cues that can instantly pull you into unwanted routines. Trying to resist these constant prompts requires a tremendous amount of mental energy, which eventually gets depleted. Clear suggests a more sustainable approach, proactively redesigning your environment to minimize or eliminate these negative cues. It's like strategically removing temptations from your path rather than constantly fighting them head-on. He provides practical examples of how to make cues for bad habits invisible. If you want to reduce your social media usage, turn off notifications, or even better, keep your phone in another room while you're working. If you want to eat less junk food, don't keep it in the house. If you find yourself watching too much TV, unplug it and put the remote in a drawer. The story Clear tells in this chapter is about understanding that self-control isn't an unlimited resource. Instead of constantly relying on it to resist tempting cues, we can be smarter by making those cues less obvious or even completely invisible. By proactively managing our environment, we reduce the mental burden of resisting bad habits. It's about making the default option the good option by removing the triggers for the unwanted ones. This isn't about being weak-willed, it's about being strategic and designing our surroundings to support the behaviors we want to cultivate, making self-control feel less like a constant battle and more like the natural consequence of our environment. A child to eat their vegetables. Simply telling them it's good for them might not be enough. But what if you paired it with something they really enjoy, like a small treat afterwards? In Chapter 8 of Atomic Habits, James Clear delves into the second law of behavior change: make it attractive. He tells a story about how we can make good habits irresistible by understanding the science of dopamine and using a clever technique called temptation bundling. The story begins with explaining the role of dopamine, a powerful neurotransmitter in our brain associated with pleasure, motivation, and reward. Claire explains that it's not just the experience of pleasure that drives us, but the anticipation of it. When we expect a reward, our dopamine levels spike, making us want to take action to get it. This is why we often crave the anticipation of something good even more than the thing itself. Knowing this, Claire introduces temptation bundling. This strategy involves linking an action you want to do with an action you need to do. It's like creating a package deal for your brain, making the necessary habit more attractive by pairing it with something you already find enjoyable. He gives practical examples of how to implement this. For instance, if you want to exercise more, need to do, but love watching your favorite TV show, want to do, you could bundle them. After I finish my workout, I will watch my favorite TV show. The enjoyment of the show becomes the reward that makes the workout more appealing. Similarly, if you need to check work emails, need to do, but enjoy having a cup of coffee, want to do, you could say, after I check my work emails, I will have a cup of coffee. The story Claire tells in this chapter is about leveraging our natural inclination towards pleasure to build better habits. It's about making good habits more enticing by associating them with things we already find desirable. By understanding the power of dopamine and strategically bundling temptations with necessary actions, we can make those good habits feel less like a chore and more like a pathway to something we genuinely look forward to. It's about making the habits we know we should do feel more like the habits we want to do. Learn a new language. You could try studying on your own, but what if you joined a language exchange group where everyone else is also enthusiastic about learning? Suddenly, the desire to practice and improve feels stronger. In Chapter 9 of Atomic Habits, James Clear tells a story about how our social environment, our family, friends, and wider community, profoundly shapes our habits, often in ways we don't even realize. He explores the power of social norms and how we can intentionally leverage them to our advantage. The story begins by highlighting our innate human desire to fit in and belong. We are social creatures, and our behavior is heavily influenced by the people around us. We tend to adopt the habits of the groups we identify with. If everyone in your circle of friends is health conscious and exercises regularly, you're more likely to adopt those habits yourself. Conversely, if your social circle engages in unhealthy behaviors, it can be challenging to resist those influences. Claire explains that there are three primary ways social norms influence our habits. 1. We imitate the habits of those who are close to us. We tend to mirror the behaviors of our family and friends, often unconsciously. 2. We imitate the habits of the powerful and successful. We look up to those we admire and try to emulate their actions, believing that their habits contribute to their success. 3. We imitate the habits of the majority. We have a strong desire to conform and fit in with the group, so we often adopt the behaviors that are considered normal within our social circles. Knowing this, Claire suggests that we can intentionally choose environments and communities that support the habits we want to build. It's like strategically surrounding yourself with people who are already living the way you aspire to. He provides examples of how to leverage social norms for positive change. If you want to eat healthier, join a group of people who enjoy cooking nutritious meals. If you want to become a better writer, join a writing workshop. If you want to quit a bad habit, seek out support groups where others are striving for the same goal. The story Claire tells in this chapter is about recognizing the powerful, often invisible, influence of our social environment on our habits. It's about understanding that our desire to belong and fit in can be a powerful motivator for positive change. By consciously choosing our social circles and aligning ourselves with groups that embody the habits we desire, we can make those good habits more attractive and easier to adopt. It's about harnessing the power of social norms to work for us, rather than against us, in our journey of habit building. Persistent itch. You scratch it, and for a moment, you feel relief. But the itch keeps coming back, and you keep scratching, even though it might be making things worse in the long run. In Chapter 10 of Atomic Habits, James Clear tells a story about how our bad habits are often like that persistent itch. They might provide temporary relief or pleasure, but they often stem from deeper, underlying cravings. He teaches us that to truly fix bad habits, we need to understand and address these root cravings, rather than just trying to suppress the habit itself. The story begins by challenging the common perception that bad habits are simply about a lack of willpower or moral failing. Instead, Clear suggests that every habit, even a bad one, serves a purpose. It's a solution to a particular craving or need. The problem is that the solution is often ineffective or has negative long-term consequences. He revisits the four-part habit loop: cue, craving, response, and reward. When it comes to bad habits, the cue triggers a craving, and the bad habit is the response that delivers a temporary reward, satisfying that craving. To change the bad habit, we need to understand what craving it's actually serving. Kia provides examples to illustrate this. Someone who constantly checks their phone might not just be addicted to the phone itself. The underlying craving might be for connection, novelty, or avoiding boredom. Someone who bites their nails might be craving a way to cope with stress or anxiety. Someone who overeats might be seeking comfort or emotional soothing. The key to fixing bad habits, Clear argues, lies in reframing them. Instead of just seeing the bad habit as something to eliminate, we need to ask, what craving is this habit satisfying for me? Once we identify the underlying craving, we can then look for healthier and more effective ways to satisfy that same need. So, the story Clear tells in this chapter is about becoming a detective of our own bad habits. It's about looking beyond the surface behavior and digging deeper to understand the cravings that drive them. By understanding these underlying needs, we can then consciously choose new, healthier responses that provide similar or even better rewards without the negative consequences. It's about finding a better way to scratch that itch, one that doesn't lead to further problems. This shift in perspective, from simply trying to stop the bad habit to understanding and addressing the underlying craving, is a crucial step towards lasting behavioral change. On a long hike up a mountain. The summit looks daunting, and the thought of the entire journey might feel overwhelming. In Chapter 11 of Atomic Habits, James Clear offers a more approachable strategy: walk slowly, but never backward. This chapter, which kicks off Part 4 on making habits easy, tells a story about the power of starting small and making consistent, even tiny, progress. The story begins by acknowledging our tendency to want big, immediate results. We often set ambitious goals and then get discouraged when we don't see rapid progress. This can lead to feelings of overwhelm and ultimately abandonment of our efforts. Clear counters this by emphasizing that progress, no matter how small, is still progress. He uses the analogy of walking slowly but never backward. Even if your steps are small and the journey feels long, as long as you're consistently moving forward, you'll eventually reach your destination. The key is to avoid setbacks and maintain momentum, even if it's at a snail's pace. Clear argues that when starting a new habit, it's far more effective to make it incredibly easy to do. This reduces the initial friction and makes it more likely that you'll stick with it. Think about wanting to start exercising. Instead of aiming for an hour-long workout 5 days a week, which might feel overwhelming, you could start with just 5 minutes of stretching each day. The barrier to entry is so low that it's almost impossible to say no. The story Clear tells in this chapter is about embracing the power of small wins. It's about prioritizing consistency over intensity, especially in the beginning. By making the initial steps incredibly easy, you build momentum and create a foundation upon which you can gradually build. It's about focusing on showing up and doing the bare minimum, because once you've started, it's much easier to continue. The important thing is to avoid going backward, to maintain that consistent forward motion, no matter how slow. This approach makes habit building feel less like a monumental task and more like a manageable, step-by-step journey. In a grocery store, faced with two checkout lines. One is short and moving quickly, the other is long and slow. Which do you choose? In Chapter 12 of Atomic Habits, James Clear tells a story about our inherent tendency to gravitate towards the path of least resistance. He calls this the law of least effort, and it's a powerful principle that significantly impacts our habits. The story begins by acknowledging that human beings are wired to conserve energy. We naturally seek out options that require the least amount of physical and mental effort. This isn't laziness, Clear argues, it's simply an evolutionary adaptation that helps us survive. However, this tendency can also make it challenging to adopt good habits, which often require some initial effort. He illustrates this with examples. We are more likely to watch TV than read a book because it requires less mental energy. We are more likely to eat junk food than cook a healthy meal because it's faster and easier. We are more likely to scroll through social media than engage in a creative project because it demands less focus. Clear emphasizes that to build good habits, we need to reduce the friction associated with them. Friction is the effort required to perform a behavior. The lower the friction, the easier the habit is to adopt. Conversely, to break bad habits, we need to increase the friction, making them more difficult to do. He provides practical strategies for applying the law of least effort. To make good habits easier, we can reduce the number of steps. If you want to exercise more, lay out your workout clothes the night before. Automate your habits. Set up automatic bill payments to avoid late fees. Increase convenience. keep healthy snacks readily available and unhealthy ones out of sight. To make bad habits harder, we can increase the number of steps. If you want to watch less TV, unplug it and put the remote in a drawer. Create a friction tax, delete social media apps from your phone and only access them on a computer, making it less convenient. Use commitment devices. Tell a friend about your goals to create external accountability. The story Clear tells in this chapter is about understanding our natural inclination towards efficiency and using it to our advantage. It's about designing our environment and our habits in a way that minimizes the effort required for good behaviors and maximizes the effort required for bad ones. By making good habits the path of least resistance, we make them far more likely to stick. It's about working with our inherent tendencies, rather than against them, to create lasting change. A blank page, trying to start writing a novel. The sheer size of the task feels overwhelming, and you end up doing something else instead. In Chapter 13 of Atomic Habits, James Clear introduces a simple yet powerful strategy to overcome this inertia, the 2-minute rule. It's a way to trick your brain into getting started, making even the most daunting tasks feel manageable. The story he tells is about breaking down any new habit into a 2-minute version. The idea is that any habit can be scaled down until it takes less than 2 minutes to do. This reduces the initial friction and makes it incredibly easy to start. He provides examples. Read before bed becomes read 1 page. Do 30 minutes of exercise becomes put on my workout clothes. Study for an hour becomes open my notes. The point isn't to do only 2 minutes of the habit, but to make the starting point so easy that you can't say no. Clear argues that once you've started, it's much easier to continue. The initial inertia is often the biggest hurdle. The 2-minute rule helps you overcome that hurdle by making the first step so small that it feels effortless. Once you've started, you're more likely to keep going, often exceeding the initial 2-minute commitment. The story Clear tells in this chapter is about understanding that procrastination often stems from feeling overwhelmed. The 2-minute rule is a practical way to bypass this feeling by making the starting point incredibly easy. It's about focusing on the first step, not the entire journey. By making the initial action so small that it feels almost trivial, you make it far more likely that you'll actually do it. And once you've started, the momentum often carries you forward, turning a seemingly daunting task into a manageable and even enjoyable experience. Stick to a budget. You might track your spending diligently for a while, but then slip up when temptation strikes. In Chapter 14 of Atomic Habits, James Clear tells a story about taking things a step further, about designing your life in a way that makes good habits almost unavoidable and bad habits incredibly difficult, if not impossible. He introduces the concepts of commitment devices and automation as powerful tools for this. The story begins by acknowledging that willpower alone is often insufficient to maintain good habits and resist bad ones in the long run. We need strategies that create a stronger framework for our desired behaviors. Commitment devices are strategies you put in place to increase the likelihood of sticking to good habits by making it painful or difficult to break them. Think of it like making a public promise or setting up a situation where not following through has consequences. Clear gives examples like signing a contract with a personal trainer, where you lose money if you cancel sessions. Another example is telling a friend about your goal to quit smoking, creating social accountability. The pain of breaking the commitment, financial loss or letting someone down, acts as a powerful motivator to stay on track. Automation, on the other hand, involves using technology or systems to make good habits happen automatically and bad habits require more conscious effort. Think about setting up automatic transfers from your checking account to your savings account. This automates the good habit of saving. Similarly, unsubscribing from tempting email lists or deleting frequently used social media apps from your phone makes engaging in those bad habits more inconvenient. Clear illustrates how these strategies reduce friction for good habits and increase friction for bad ones. By automating savings, you remove the decision-making process and make saving effortless. By deleting social media apps, you add several steps before you can mindlessly scroll, making the bad habit less appealing. The story Clear tells in this chapter is about proactively shaping your environment and systems to support your goals. It's about going beyond relying on willpower in the moment and instead setting up your life in a way that guides you towards good behavior and away from bad behavior. By using commitment devices, you create external pressure to follow through, and by using automation, you make the desired actions the default, effortless choice. It's about making the path to good habits smooth and the path to bad habits bumpy, ultimately making the desired outcomes far more likely. Train a dog. You give it a treat when it sits, and it's more likely to sit again. You scold it when it jumps, and it's less likely to jump. In chapter 15 of Atomic Habits, James Clear tells a story about this fundamental principle of behavior change. What is immediately rewarded is repeated. What is immediately punished is avoided. This cardinal rule highlights the power of immediate consequences in shaping our habits. The story begins by explaining that our brains are wired to prioritize immediate rewards over delayed ones. This time inconsistency means that even if we know a good habit will benefit us in the long run, the lack of immediate gratification can make it hard to stick with. Conversely, bad habits often feel good in the moment, making them difficult to resist, even if we know they'll have negative consequences later. Clear emphasizes that to build good habits, we need to find ways to make them immediately satisfying. This doesn't necessarily mean grand rewards. Even small, immediate positive feedback can make a big difference. He gives examples like tracking your progress on a habit tracker, seeing the chain grow provides a sense of accomplishment, or rewarding yourself with a small treat or relaxing activity after completing a desired behavior. Conversely, to break bad habits, we need to make them immediately unsatisfying. This could involve creating a habit contract, where you face a tangible penalty, like losing money if you break your commitment, or finding an accountability partner who will hold you responsible. The story Clear tells in this chapter is about aligning our habits with our brain's natural reward system. It's about understanding that we are more likely to repeat behaviors that feel good now, not just those that promise benefits in the distant future. By strategically incorporating immediate rewards into our good habits and immediate punishments into our bad habits, we can create a powerful system for lasting behavioral change. It's about working with our natural tendencies, rather than against them, to make the habits we want to cultivate feel more appealing and the habits we want to avoid feel less so. Save money. You might have a goal in mind, but without seeing your savings grow, it can feel abstract and demotivating. In chapter 16 of Atomic Habits, James Clear tells a story about how making your progress visible can be a powerful form of immediate satisfaction, helping you stick with good habits every day. He introduces the concept of habit tracker as a simple yet highly effective tool for this. The story begins by reiterating the importance of immediate rewards. While the long-term benefits of good habits are significant, they often feel distant. Habit tracker provide a visual representation of your progress, offering a sense of immediate accomplishment each time you complete your desired behavior. Think of it like this: every time you floss, exercise, or practice your instrument, you mark it on your tracker, whether it's a calendar, a notebook, or a digital app. This simple act creates a visual chain of your efforts. The longer the chain grows, the more motivated you become to keep it going. Each completed day becomes a small victory, providing a tangible reward for your effort. Clear emphasizes that habit tracker work for several reasons. They make progress visible. You can see at a glance how consistent you've been, which can be incredibly motivating. They provide a visual cue. The tracker serves as a reminder of the habit you are trying to build. They are inherently satisfying. The act of marking off a task provides a small sense of accomplishment, reinforcing the behavior. They create a "don't break the chain" mentality. Once you have a streak going, you'll be more reluctant to break it and lose your progress. The story Clear tells in this chapter is about leveraging the power of visual feedback to make good habits more satisfying in the short term. It's about turning an invisible process, the gradual accumulation of good habits, into something tangible and rewarding. By using Habit Tracker, you're not just working towards a distant goal, you are experiencing small wins every day, which fuels your motivation and makes it much more likely that you'll stick with your good habits in the long run. It's about making progress feel real and rewarding, one checkmark at a time. To wake up early and exercise. You might be motivated at first, but then the snooze button starts looking tempting. What if you knew someone was waiting for you at the gym, expecting you to be there? In chapter 17 of Atomic Habits, James Clear tells a story about how having an accountability partner can dramatically increase your chances of sticking to your goals. The story begins by highlighting the limitations of relying solely on internal motivation. We are all prone to making excuses and letting ourselves off the hook, especially when no one else is watching. An accountability partner introduces an element of external pressure, making it harder to slack off. Clear explains that having someone who's tracking your progress and expecting you to follow through creates a powerful sense of responsibility. You are not just accountable to yourself anymore, you are accountable to another person. This social pressure can be a strong motivator to stay on track, even when your internal motivation wanes. He provides examples of how to find and utilize an accountability partner effectively. It could be a friend, a family member, a colleague, or even an online community. The key is to find someone who will consistently check in with you, ask about your progress, and hold you to your commitments. You might agree to share your progress reports, meet regularly to discuss your goals, or even set up a system of rewards and consequences together. The story Clear tells in this chapter is about harnessing the power of social connection to reinforce good habits. It's about recognizing that we are often more likely to follow through on our commitments when we know someone else is counting on us. By finding an accountability partner, we create an external system of support and encouragement, making it far more likely that we'll stick with our good habits, even when the going gets tough. It's about turning a solitary journey into a shared one, making the path to success feel less lonely and more achievable. Become a successful basketball player. You might admire Michael Jordan's talent, but can you simply copy his genes? In Chapter 18 of Atomic Habits, James Clear tells a story about the complex interplay between genetics and habit formation. He explores the truth about talent, acknowledging that while our genes do play a role, they don't determine our destiny. The story begins by debunking the myth that success is solely determined by innate ability. While some people may have a genetic predisposition for certain skills or traits, Clear argues that habits are still the primary driver of long-term achievement. Genes might give you a head start, but consistent effort and smart strategies are what truly lead to mastery. He uses the analogy of a car. Genes are like the engine, providing potential, but habits are like the driver, determining the direction and destination. A powerful engine is useless without a skilled driver and a clear route. Clear emphasizes that while we can't change our genes, we can choose habits that align with our natural strengths and inclinations. If you're naturally introverted, you might thrive in a field that requires independent work. If you're naturally outgoing, you might excel in a role that involves collaboration and communication. The key is to find your genetic sweet spot, areas where your natural abilities give you an edge, making it easier to develop and maintain good habits. He also cautions against using genetics as an excuse for inaction. Even if you don't possess exceptional talent in a particular area, consistent effort and well-designed habits can still lead to significant improvement. It's about maximizing your potential, whatever your starting point may be. The story Clear tells in this chapter is about understanding the nuanced role of genetics in habit formation. It's about acknowledging that while some advantages may be predetermined, our choices and actions are still the most powerful determinants of our success. By identifying our strengths and aligning our habits with them, we can make the journey of improvement smoother and more enjoyable. It's about playing the hand we're dealt, but playing it strategically and consistently to achieve our full potential. Video game. If it's too easy, you get bored quickly. If it's too hard, you get frustrated and give up. There's that sweet spot in the middle, where the challenge is just right, keeping you engaged and motivated. In Chapter 19 of Atomic Habits, James Clear tells a story about this Goldilocks rule and how it applies to habit formation and motivation in life and work. The story begins by exploring why some activities hold our attention while others don't. Clear explains that humans experience peak motivation when working on tasks that are right on the edge of their current abilities. It's that feeling of being challenged, but not overwhelmed, that keeps us in a state of flow, that state of being completely absorbed in an activity. He calls this the Goldilocks rule, borrowing from the children's story. Tasks should be not too hard, not too easy, but just right. This principle applies to habit formation as well. If your habits are too easy, you'll get bored and lose interest. If they're too difficult, you'll become discouraged and give up. Clear argues that to maintain motivation, we need to continually find ways to slightly increase the difficulty of our habits as we improve. This keeps us challenged and engaged, preventing us from plateauing. Think of it like gradually increasing the weight you lift at the gym. He also emphasizes the importance of finding a balance between challenge and progress. We need to feel like we are making progress to stay motivated, but we also need to be challenged to avoid boredom. It's a delicate dance, but finding that sweet spot is crucial for long-term motivation. The story Clear tells in this chapter is about understanding the delicate balance between challenge and progress in habit formation. It's about recognizing that motivation isn't a static force, it fluctuates depending on the difficulty of the tasks we are undertaking. By applying the Goldilocks rule, we can design our habits and our work in a way that keeps us consistently engaged and motivated, leading to greater long-term success. It's about finding that just right level of challenge that keeps us in the flow and pushing our boundaries without overwhelming us. Built a new habit, like going to the gym every day. You are feeling great, seeing results, and the routine becomes almost automatic. But what happens when that initial excitement fades? In Chapter 20 of Atomic Habits, James Clear tells a cautionary tale. Even good habits can lead to a plateau if we are not careful. The story begins by acknowledging the power of automation. Once a habit becomes ingrained, it frees up mental space, allowing us to focus on other things. However, This can also lead to complacency. We might start going through the motions, without actively thinking about how to improve or adapt. Clear uses the analogy of a skilled driver who has driven the same route so many times that they can do it on autopilot. While this efficiency is useful, it can also lead to a lack of awareness and potential mistakes. Similarly, with our habits, we can become so comfortable that we stop paying attention to whether they're still serving us effectively. He emphasizes the importance of continuous improvement and reflection. Just because a habit is good doesn't mean it should remain static. As our circumstances change, our habits may need to evolve. We need to regularly evaluate our routines, identify areas for optimization, and be willing to experiment with new approaches. Clear also cautions against becoming too attached to our habits. While consistency is important, rigidity can be detrimental. We need to be flexible and adaptable, willing to adjust our routines when necessary. The story Clear tells in this chapter is about recognizing that habit formation is not a set it and forget it process. Even good habits require ongoing attention and refinement. It's about avoiding the trap of complacency by actively seeking ways to improve, adapt, and challenge ourselves. It's about understanding that the journey of self-improvement is a continuous cycle of building, evaluating, and refining our habits to ensure they continue to serve us effectively over the long term. In the entire journey we've just taken through Atomic Habits as a step-by-step guide to building a better you. It all starts with understanding the fundamentals, Part 1. James Clear kicks off by revealing the surprising power of Atomic Habits, Chapter 1, showing how tiny, 1% improvements compound into remarkable results, like those relentless drops of water carving stone. He then delves into how your habits shape your identity, and vice versa, Chapter 2, emphasizing that true change comes from becoming the person you want to be, with habits and identity constantly influencing each other. To understand how habits work, Clear breaks them down into 4 simple steps, Chapter 3, Cue, Craving, Response, and Reward, the fundamental loop that governs all our behaviors. He reinforces this with a historical example in The Man Who Didn't Wash His Hands, Chapter 4, illustrating the profound impact of small, consistent actions. Next, we move into the first law, Make It Obvious, Part 2. To build good habits, we first need to see the starting point. Clear introduces the best way to start a new habit, Chapter 5, with strategies like implementation intentions, specifying when and where, and habit stacking, linking new habits to existing ones. He then highlights that motivation is overrated. Environment often matters more, Chapter 6, showing how designing our surroundings can make good habits easier and bad habits harder. Finally, he reveals the secret to self-control, Chapter 7, isn't just willpower, but strategically reducing exposure to the cues that trigger bad habits. Then comes the second law, Make It Attractive, Part 3. Clear explains how to make a habit irresistible, Chapter 8, by understanding dopamine and using temptation bundling, pairing what you need to do with what you want to do. He then explores the role of family and friends in shaping your habits, Chapter 9, emphasizing the powerful influence of social norms and how to leverage them for positive change. To tackle bad habits, he teaches how to find and fix the causes of your bad habits, Chapter 10, by understanding the underlying cravings they serve and finding healthier alternatives. Now we tackle the third law, Make It Easy, Part 4, focusing on reducing friction. Clear advises us to walk slowly, but never backward, Chapter 11, emphasizing the power of starting small and making consistent, even tiny, progress. He then explains the law of least effort, Chapter 12, highlighting our natural tendency towards ease and how to design habits accordingly. To overcome procrastination, he introduces how to stop procrastinating by using the 2-minute rule, Chapter 13, breaking down tasks into incredibly small starting points. Finally, he discusses how to make good habits inevitable and bad habits impossible, Chapter 14, through commitment devices and automation. We then reach the fourth law, Make It Satisfying, Part 5, focusing on reinforcement. Clear lays down the cardinal rule of behavior change, Chapter 15, immediate rewards are repeated, and immediate punishments are avoided. He then introduces how to stick with good habits every day, Chapter 16, using Habit Tracker to make progress visible and rewarding. Finally, he explains how an accountability partner can change everything, Chapter 17, by leveraging external pressure to stay on track. Finally, Advanced Tactics, Part 6, offers more nuanced strategies. Clear explores the truth about talent, when genes matter and when they don't, Chapter 18, emphasizing that while genetics play a role, habits are the ultimate driver. He then discusses the Goldilocks rule, Chapter 19, highlighting the importance of finding the right level of challenge to stay motivated. He concludes with a crucial reminder about the downside of creating good habits, Chapter 20, cautioning against plateauing and stressing the need for continuous improvement and reflection. So, the core lesson of Atomic Habits is that significant life change doesn't come from massive overhauls, but from the accumulation of small, consistent improvements. By understanding the 4 laws of behavior change, make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying, and applying practical strategies within each law, we can build better habits that stick and ultimately transform our lives, one atomic habit at a time. It's about focusing on the system, not just the goal, and embracing the power of continuous, incremental progress. Thank you so much for staying tuned to Audiobooks Stall all the way to the end of this comprehensive summary of Atomic Habits. We truly appreciate you investing your time with us. If you found this insightful and helpful in understanding James Clear's powerful framework, please do give this video a like. And if you want to stay updated with more insightful audiobook summaries like this, don't forget to subscribe to Audiobooks Stall. Your support helps us bring more valuable content your way. Thanks again for watching.